course I live with integrity. When it's easy, I show God's love to everyone. Everyone that's like me. I'm very generous. They'll just spend it on drugs. I'm all about helping others. And other people seeing me do it. Yes, I believe in God's grace, but they really hurt me. I could never forgive them.
Today we're going to talk about postmodernism, Job, Greek mythology, World War I, time travel. True. And Jesus and Peter. Think we can do this? You ready to run? We're moving faster. Okay? Good with that? All right, good. How many of you, oh yeah, the title is just integrity. It don't need any extra dressing. Integrity is quiet, strong, firm, determined. I don't need fancy subtitles or cool pictures. How many of you have ever heard a child say, "But you promised. But you said after we would do that. You told me last week that this Saturday we were going to go to whatever." I was going to say Toys R Us, but you can't do that no more. You told me next Saturday we were going to go on Amazon and order my toys. That's what we do now. Right? Every child. The reason everybody's chuckling is because everyone, parent or not, has experienced that encounter when you've told a younger person that you were going to reward them with X, and then when the moment came, "Geez, kid, I got 700 things to do. And we're not going to make it this time, honey," right? Why does the child get so upset? Don't they understand all the things you have to manage? Right? Now, today, how many of you have heard the expression, "Well, everything's relative"? Anyone? Yeah. Okay. Seaboard, Chesapeake? Those of you online? You heard that one? Or truth is what you make it. Or it's my life. Don't judge me. I get to determine for myself what's right and wrong. I'm going to live how I want to live as I see fit. And that's freedom, don't you know? So much freedom, so little responsibility, huh? So postmodernism, in case you don't know, is the philosophy that rules the day, and it's the one by which I've come of age. The last 40 or 50 years, it's a movement in architecture, in art, in every element of the way we think and perceive how society should operate, that teaches us that everybody is left to their own devices. The definition, which will be up on the screen for those of you who are interested, is postmodernism is a prevailing philosophy or viewpoint which denies the existence of any ultimate, absolute, or transcendent values. Thus, all truth is relative as we see fit, right? So, postmodernism says there's nothing external that holds a standard by which we must be measured. It is only internal, as I feel from day to day, that determines the steps I will take and the choices I will make. Right? Everybody get a sense of that and the prevailing power of that in our culture today? The thing that confuses me is none of these kids understand. They keep expecting you to keep your word. Haven't they heard that postmodernism is where we're at now? Right? Like, come on. Dad sees how he wants to do it, and that's the way I feel. Well, the problem is, just as I said at the outset, there's no certainty in a postmodern life. There's nothing that you can depend or rely on because everything is self-determined. And the danger is we still have a generation being raised that is just begging and hoping and praying that somebody's going to do what they said they would do. That somebody's going to show up. That somebody's going to come home. That somebody's going to ignore their own desires and interests for a moment and say, I'll do what it takes for that next generation. The person we're going to look at first is Job. He's a fun guy, huh? How many of you are familiar with Job's story? Okay, good. Job chapter 2 is where we're going to pick up the story. Our boy Job had everything, man. He was loaded. He was driving Maseratis. He had palaces. He was on Cribs. Do they still have that show? I don't know anymore. But at one point, Satan came and God allowed him to take everything away. Boy, that'll mess with us in our theology of prosperity and everything being perfect all the time on earth. Verse 1, I'll get to this without the commentary, okay? Thanks, Kay. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. That's kind of weird. Satan's just rocking up. Hey, God, how's it going today? Better than it is for you. And the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth, walking back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Hey, Satan, you see my boy Job? Huh? I'm real proud of him. There's none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil. And still, after you've taken all this stuff from him, by the way, in chapter 1, Job lost all his children and all of his property and wealth. I had to get through that real quick because of time. And still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. Verse 4, Satan says to the Lord, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has, he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said in verse 6 to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd, piece of pottery, with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of his ashes. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. No commentary. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. I'm not here today to tell you to be like Job. We can't. I sure can. If anybody is like Job, please come up. Tell us. But it says in all this, Job did not sin. Job was not postmodern. Job is pre-modern. And he knew that integrity is not relative. That's our first point. Integrity is not relative. It doesn't matter, as Job said, whether God has been incredibly good to me, the blessings that he's given. When conditions change, when we experience stuff we didn't expect, can we, like Job, still declare that he is God? That's what Job does. In the midst of losing his entire abundance, family, life, and his body afflicted with boils from head to foot, he says to his wife, no, honey, I'm not going to turn my back on God. For the same God that has provided joy and peace can comfort and guide me through this storm. Second point, integrity is time sensitive. Integrity is time sensitive. As we said at the outset, there's power in the name of Jesus because for all time, he's kept his word. Every day since creation, the integrity of Jesus has grown in strength and density. Because every day he keeps his word, he just gets that much more authority. It's the same in your life. Whatever promises you've made, some of them we haven't kept. And the good news at the end of this is some of you are going to get the opportunity to meet Jesus Christ, through whom our integrity is only possible. and by whom our integrity is certain. But for now, we're still with Job. This is before Jesus. Every day that Job held on to his innocence and his integrity, his case did not get weaker, it got stronger. And as an attorney, I've heard many stories of people wrongly accused and even sentenced to years and years in jail and held on to their innocence to the very end. And you know what's fascinating, and finally, modern DNA evidence or what have you exonerates them. What's interesting to me is in any of the news clips that you see of people like that, they always have joy. They always are testifying of God's goodness, despite the fact that they spent 20 plus years in jail. Now, they're still going to get their money from the government, right? Just because God has been good to you doesn't mean that you don't receive what's due to you for wrongness that's come against you. Does that make sense? Anyway, integrity is time sensitive. And the longer we honor our word and keep our commitment, the stronger the relationship that we've created by that honor and that integrity becomes. My in-laws are celebrating their 58th or 59th wedding anniversary this coming December. And as time has passed and the kids have grown up and now they've got grandkids and great-grandkids, we've had conversations about their relationship. And in the early days, there were moments that they considered walking away. And we were all together last month, and Leah's mother said, none of this would be here today if we had walked away. Now, if you happen to have experienced divorce, this is not a judgment thing. It's an elevation of integrity. Because in our hearts, we all know and we all desperately seek for that kind of consistency in our life. So Job says, after everything, chapter 31, verses 4 through 8, does he not see my ways and count all my steps? If I have walked with falsehood, or if my foot has hastened to deceit, let me be weighed on honest scales, that God may know my integrity. Job's saying straight up, hey God, you know what I've done. You know I've kept my word. You know I'm good for whatever I say. I couldn't say that. I don't know, like I said, if anybody here can say that. Job's a pretty remarkable man. If my step, verse 7, has turned from the way, or my heart walked after my eyes, or if any spot adheres to my hands, then let me sow and another eat. Yes, let my harvest be rooted out. Whatever I've got coming, God, if I have done anything deceptive to obtain it, take it. Job has clean hands, full of integrity. Over the time, through all the testing, Job did not curse God. And there may be things in your life where stuff started off and it seemed like it was true, but eventually integrity is the only thing that will stand. The literal meaning of the word aletheia is the state of being hidden, the state of being evident. And we've got these mirrors up here. Everybody good? So we talk about having financial integrity. You've heard that term, right? Everybody with me? So financial integrity has to do with accountability. You have an accountant who makes sure that nothing is hidden. You following? So every year, this church goes through a process of an audit to show the congregation, the community, and whomever is interested that we handle and manage our financial resources with integrity. But that only happens by having a full spectrum of observation. It's not just one form or one document or one account. Everything is opened up. The books are completely revealed to the accountant. And one of the reasons that integrity's time sensitivity is so essential is having accountability in our life. You see, it's one thing for me to walk up to this mirror, that one's too short, this one, and look in the mirror, yep, looking good. Y'all like my jacket, by the way? Thanks. Some questionable attire, but that's my style. And don't judge me. So I can't see anything on the backside. I don't know what the weaknesses are or what I'm missing. Only when we're surrounded by friends who can see every angle and say to us with love and grace, hey, you promised you'd show up for this, man. Why don't you do what you say you're going to do? I love you, but I love who you can be as much as I love who you are. And I want you to hold yourself accountable. So integrity is relative. Does that make sense? So in the community of the body of Christ, we have to have people who can tell us where we're missing it, where something's out of place. My last point is integrity is identity. Right? So it's not relative. It's time sensitive. Right? Oh, by the way, I promised you time travel. We're about to time travel back to World War I. So they discovered in records and archives that Captain Robert Campbell was captured by the Germans, was in the prisoner of war camp, and his mother, he hears, is dying. He writes a letter to the leader of Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm, and says, can I please go see my mother? I promise I'll come back to prison camp. What? For real? And Kaiser says, if he will give me his word as a British officer, I will say yes. His identity as a British officer, as people of integrity that would do whatever they said they would do, even to their harm, enabled the leader of Germany to let a prisoner go because he said he'd come back. How amazing would it be if people, even those who were against us, knew that when we said we were going to do something, we were going to do it? How awesome would it be if people in Hampton Roads and beyond heard, oh, Wave.Church said they're going to do that? They're going to do it. None of this is possible without Jesus. And that's the whole point. Integrity is identity, but our integrity is only secure when we identify with Christ. Now, Job, killer example. What do they say? Hashtag unrelatable, right? He's like nobody else. But Peter, y'all know Peter in the New Testament? Crazy disciple? Yes? Walked on water, cuts off ears, does all kinds of stuff. Peter, I can get down with Peter. I know what it's like to make bad choices, to say the wrong things, right? Singers, musicians, y'all can come on back. We're going to turn to John chapter 18. John chapter 18, Seaboard, Chesapeake, good? Thanks again. Online, you don't need to buy that. Just listen to the word. I know it's Amazon Prime, but think about your integrity for that budget. Oh, that's a word for somebody. John chapter 18, verse 15 through 18. And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. This is after the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus has been arrested. Y'all know the scene? By the way, I'm really glad Jesus didn't change his mind after he told God he would go through it in the garden. And then he got all beat up and stuff. It's like, oh, it's going to be like that, God? Never mind. But he saw you. He saw you today, 2,000 years ago, and he said, I will take whatever they dish out if it means rescuing my loved one, my sweet child. So anyway, get to the verse, Jack. Let's go 16. But Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her who kept the door and brought Peter in. Then the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, hey, you're also, I like the way they worded this, you are not also one of this man's disciples, are you? Always use a double negative when you can just be straightforward. That's our Old English, New King James, thank you. Are you not one of his disciples, she says? And he says, I am not. Verse 18, now the servants and officers who had made a fire of coals stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. Jump down to verse 25. The girl's already asked him, and he's denying his identity with Christ. I'm not part of that. Now, verse 25, Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. Therefore they said to him, "You are not also one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it. "I'm not," he says. One more time, for good measure. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Peter cut off. Right, so he's in the garden, this next guy, and he says, "Hey, you cut my cousin Malchus' ear off. I was right there." "What are you talking about? You don't know him." And then Jesus picked it up and put it back on, but we're going to crucify him anyway, even though that was really godlike, and none of us could do it. One of the servants, that relative, said, "Did I not see you in the garden?" Peter denied again, and immediately a rooster crowed. We're going to jump to John 21. You see, Peter lost his integrity because his identity and strength was found in Christ. And he blatantly, bald-faced, straight to the people, one of whom was with him, said, "I don't know him. I've never known him. I'm not a part of Jesus." Aren't you thankful that, just like Peter, Jesus says, no matter what you've done, no matter how you've denied me, maybe not with words, but with actions, I still love you, and I still want. That's cool. That's cool. So let's get to the best scene of it all right here. John chapter 21, verse 7 through 10. Therefore, that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." So they're out fishing, and Jesus comes walking up. And John says, "It is the Lord." Now, when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his coat, his outer garment, and plunged into the sea. Think about, just pretend with me, okay, that you're Peter. And 3 days ago, you told everybody you didn't know Jesus. The man who called you, the man who led you, the man who saved you, the man for whom you walked on the water with. You told everybody he ain't a part of you and you're not a part of him. And now here he is. He came back to life. Peter jumps in the water. He's swimming to him. He can't believe he has the opportunity to be redeemed. It's the same for us today. 2,000 years later, it doesn't matter what you've done. When the Lord shows up, you jump out of the boat and swim to him, and he will give you a place in him.